Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. If we haven't met yet, my name is Celine. I'm also known as Digital Nana, and I am a retirement confidence coach. And I'm here to help midlifers like you build retirement confidence without tech overwhelm, without rejection, and without feeling like you're too late to start. I'm a nana of 3 amazing grandchildren, and we live in beautiful British Columbia. But I'll be honest with you, my retirement plan didn't exactly unfold like the glossy brochure said it would. For a big part of my life, I wasn't even thinking about retirement. I was focused on raising my family, including my medically fragile son who needed me around the clock. And when you're in that kind of a season of your life, savings accounts, investment strategies, and retirement projections are the last thing on your mind. But when you finally come up for air and realize, wait a second, I haven't even started saving for retirement, it hits like a big wave. And that's exactly what happened to me. And if you ever had that moment of, oh no, what now? You're in the right place. Today's video is all about something that's rarely discussed but affects so many of us, the middle class retirement trap. And if you're sitting there wondering, what exactly is that, Celine? Well, let me paint the picture for you. For decades, the message to the middle class has been simple, right? Work hard, save into your pension, your 401k or your RSP, pay off your house, and when you retire, you'll be set. Sounds lovely, doesn't it? The only problem is, that was built on the reality that no longer exists for most people. Let's break down why that is. Back in our parents' and grandparents' days, things looked very different. Many had guaranteed pensions, which meant they could count on a fixed monthly income for life. Healthcare costs were lower, or fully covered in some cases by employers or government programs. The cost of living, from groceries to gas to housing, was far more in line with the wages. People often worked for one employer their entire career, which created stability and predictable retirement benefits. But fast forward to today, and here's the new reality. Pensions are disappearing. Fewer employers offer them, and those who do often offer less generous payouts. Healthcare costs are skyrocketing, even in countries with public health care, because things like prescriptions, dental, long-term care aren't fully covered. Inflation has been eroding purchasing power for decades, and lately it's been moving at a pace we haven't seen in 40 years. Most of us have had multiple jobs in our careers, which means no single employer is funding our retirement. And here's the kicker. If you've done all the right things and build a modest nest egg, you might still find yourself in what's called the middle class squeeze. So here's what that squeeze looks like. You have some savings, but not enough to live on for 25 years without working. You might own a home, but the equity is locked up unless you sell or borrow against it. You're not poor enough to qualify for most assistance programs, but you're not wealthy enough to be financially secure. You've got assets on paper, but your cash flow is tight. I call that land rich, cash poor. It's like being stuck in a financial no man's land. And if you're feeling that tension, you're not imagining it. It really is truly real. When I finally had the space to think about my own retirement, I realized my retirement plan up to that point was basically work until you can't, then figure it out. So it's not exactly a strategy. I still have a mortgage, which means a big chunk of my monthly income is spoken for before anything else. And here's the truth. Whether you own outright or you still have a mortgage, housing costs can eat up a huge portion of your budget. And you can't buy groceries with your home, and you can't skip that payment without serious consequences. Maybe you're still paying off your home, or you've got most of the equity tied up in it. Either way, your housing costs are a fixed part of your life, and that limits how flexible your budget feels. I had a little savings, but when I ran the math, it wasn't going to last. And the scariest part, the thought of being a burden to my kids or my grandkids. I didn't want them to have to change their lives to care for me because I didn't plan well enough. That's when I started researching and learning and eventually building my own digital income streams. But before I found solutions, I had to understand the real problem. Why does this trap exist? The middle-class retirement traps exist because our systems were designed for the world that no longer exists. Longer span lives means our money has to stretch further. Lower interest rates for most of the last 2 decades, meaning our savings haven't grown that much. Higher costs in almost every area mean our retirement budgets are tighter than ever. And for many, life happened. Illness, job loss, caregiving, divorce, which meant starting late, starting over, or draining savings to survive. If you've ever felt behind, embarrassed, or even ashamed about where you are right now, let me say this clearly. You are not alone, and you are not a failure. I talk to people every week who've worked hard their entire lives and still feel like they're treading water. This isn't about laziness or bad choices. It's about shifting the landscape that no one prepared us for. Right now, I want to pause and ask yourself, if your paycheck stopped tomorrow, how long could you maintain your current lifestyle without dipping into your savings? What's your number one month, 6 months, 2 years? Drop it in the comments. If you're not comfortable with that, just write it down for yourself. That number is important. It's a reality check, but it's also a starting point for change. Another reason most midlifers struggle with retirement planning is that they're part of the sandwich generation. This means you're simultaneously caring for aged parents and supporting your own children, sometimes even adult children. So instead of funneling extra income into savings, you're using it to help pay for your parents' medical needs or your child's college tuition. The intention is good. We love our families, but it comes at an expense of our own long-term security. I've met people in my community who are in their 60s, still working full-time, paying off debt, and helping their own grown kids with rent. And here's the tricky part. When you're in the middle of that, it's hard to see a way out. But here's the good news. Once we understand the trap, we can start building a ladder right out of it. And that's exactly what we're going to do in the rest of this video. So why does a fixed income feel so tight? Let's talk about what life actually feels like when you're living or preparing to live on a fixed income. When you're working, money feels like it's more flexible. You need a bigger grocery shop this week. You might work a little overtime. You want to take a weekend getaway. You can pick up an extra shift here and there or do some extra consulting hours to make a little extra cash. But on a fixed income, that flexibility disappears completely. Your monthly number is your monthly number, and every dollar is already spoken for. For me, the mortgage payment is one of those non-negotiables. Every single month, it's not like a subscription you can cancel. It's a must pay, which means every other part of my budget has to work around it. So there's no quick way to make more unless you've already built additional income streams. And for most people, that's not the case. I want to break this down into the 3 big areas where fixed income feels like it's the tightest, because knowing why it feels that way is the first step to making it feel more manageable. So number 1, inflation, the silent erosion of your money. We've all heard about inflation in the news, but let's make it real. 10 years ago, a loaf of bread might have been $2.50. Now, it's $4.50 or more in some places, and that's an 80% increase. And it's not just bread, it's gas, utilities, it's insurance, it's everything. Downsizing might seem like the easy answer if you still have a mortgage, but it's not always that simple. Moving comes at a cost as well, and if you're in an area with rising real estate prices, your smaller home might not be that much cheaper. Inflation doesn't just increase costs, it reduces the purchasing power of every single dollar that you have. And that means the same $1,000 that used to stretch for months now runs out in the 3rd week. I remember going grocery shopping a couple years ago with the same list I'd been buying for years. The usual total was around $140, but that day I got to check out and it was $185. Same items, same store. That extra $45 had to come from somewhere. And on a fixed income, there's no somewhere unless you cut back in another area. So what's one thing that you've bought recently that made you stop and think, wow, that's gone up a lot? Share it in the comments. I'd love to hear it. I guarantee you others will say the same thing. And there's the unexpected expenses and budget busters. When you're living on a fixed income, unexpected expenses can throw everything off balance. The car needs brakes. The furnace breaks down in January. Your grandchild's graduation comes up and you want to help with a gift or travel to attend. Those aren't luxury spends, they're just life. But if your budget is already tight, even a $300 expense can mean skipping something important or dipping into your savings. A friend of mine retired early and had her budget all worked out to the penny. 6 months later, she needed dental work, which was $7,000 worth. Her insurance covered a portion, but she still had to come up with more than $1,000. And that money had to come from her emergency fund, which set her back months in her savings plan. And that's how fixed income works. You can be doing fine until you're not. One thing hits and suddenly you're behind. So number 3, limited growth of your money isn't working hard enough. The 3rd reason fixed income feels so tight is that your money isn't growing the way it used to. When interest rates were higher, you could park money in a savings account or in a term deposit and watch it grow 4 to 6% a year. These days, many accounts pay less than 1%, which means your money isn't keeping up with inflation. That's why so many retirees find themselves spending their principal instead of just living off the interest. And that's a fast track to running out of money. Psychology of fixed income. It's not just numbers, it's also mindset. When you know your income is capped, your brain starts to operate in scarcity mode. You think, I can't afford this. Should I skip that dinner out? What if something big comes up next month? And when you live in that constant state of cautious, it's exhausting. And that's why one of our goals on this channel is to help you break that scarcity cycle. Not by pretending money doesn't matter, but by giving you tools to make it matter less. So right now, Think about your own budget. You got an uninspected expense of $500. Let's say it came up tomorrow. Where would you pull that money from? Would it come from a savings, from cutting out something else, or would you put it on a credit card? You don't have to share the answer publicly. I get that. If you don't want to, I understand. But just acknowledging it in yourself is powerful. Let's talk about the dangers of a not enough budget. A lot of people plan for retirement thinking, if my expenses are $3,000 a month and my income is $3,100 a month, I'll be fine. Problem? That $100 cushion will disappear the first time you face a rent or mortgage increase, a rise in property taxes, utility cost spikes in the winter or sometimes even in the summer, health costs that aren't covered by insurance. I spoke to a woman recently who thought she had her retirement nailed down. I've got this, she said. She had $200 left over each month. But over the course of the year, her utility bill went up, her property taxes increased, and her grocery bill jumped. That $200 cushion became a $150 deficit, and now she's drawing from her savings every month, which is the opposite of what she'd planned for. Fixed income is not totally hopeless, but it requires a plan. I'm not sharing all of this to scare you. I'm sharing this to set the stage for why having a plan or more than one source of retirement is so critical. Because here's the truth. A fixed income doesn't have to mean a fixed life. You can still create flexibility, options, and breathing room, even if you're starting late. And in the next section, we're going to talk about the biggest mistake people make when they're living on a fixed income. Mistakes that make life harder. We'll also talk about how to avoid them. One of the most powerful shifts for me was realizing that my retirement plan didn't have to depend solely on my savings or fixed income. I discovered something called the Daily Pay Blueprint. This is a step-by-step system that showed me exactly how to create a rejection-free online business in just 2 hours a day. And no, I'm not talking about complicated tech or building a website from scratch. As a matter of fact, I didn't want to do that. I didn't have to chase strangers. I don't have to DM anybody. This is about learning a simple skill set that lets you sell digital products online that are already done for you. You don't have to build anything, and you keep 100% profit. That blueprint gave me something I'd never had before, a way to generate extra income on my terms without having to work another 40 hours a week. I didn't need to quit my job or gamble my savings. I just dedicated a couple focused hours each day, and over time, that turned into real breathing room in my budget. So whether your goal is to cover rising grocery costs, funnel travel, to see your grandkids, or to create a true buffer for your retirement, this kind of online income stream can make all the difference. Let's move on to the common mistakes to avoid. Now that we've talked about why a fixed income feels so tight, I want to shift gears a little bit and cover something equally as important: the mistakes that people make when they're living on a fixed income or preparing for it. Because here's the thing, some of these mistakes aren't obvious. In fact, some of them feel like the responsible thing to do unless you realize they're working against you. I've seen these mistakes over and over again in my community, in conversations with other midlifers, and yes, I've made a couple of them myself. If you can catch them now, you'll save yourself a lot of stress later. Mistake number 1, spending like you're still working. When you go from working income to a fixed income, your spending must change. That doesn't mean you can't enjoy your life. It means you need to get crystal clear about what's essential, what's optional, what's actually bringing you joy. I met a couple in their early 60s who retired with a comfortable amount of savings, but they didn't adjust their spending. They were still doing expensive vacations twice a year, eating out 3 or 4 times a week, and upgrading their vehicles every few years. Within 5 years, they've burned through a third of their savings. And that was before a health scare that forced one of them into early medical retirement. They weren't irresponsible people. They just had shifted their mindset from earning more to protecting what they had. If you're retired today, what's one expense that you could cut out, reduce without really impacting your quality of life? Write it down. Even a small change adds up. Mistake number 2, ignoring inflation in your planning. We touched on this a little bit earlier, but it's worth repeating. Ignoring inflation is like building a house on sand. If you're planning your budget based on only on today's prices, you're already behind. Even at a modest 3% annual inflation rate, prices double roughly every 24 years. And right now, in many places, inflation is even higher than that. A gentleman in my community planned his retirement down to the dollar. His budget was airtight. But 5 years in, his grocery bill had gone up 25%. His property taxes were higher, and his insurance premiums had increased. His perfect plan wasn't perfect anymore, and he had to start pulling in some savings earlier than expected. Mistake number 3, relying on a single source of income. Whether it's Social Security, a pension, or an investment income, relying on just one source of income is pretty risky. And here's why. That income source can be reduced, it can be frozen, it can be adjusted. If it's investment-based, market downturns can shrink it. If it's government-based, policy changes can affect it. During the 2008 financial crisis, I knew retirees who were living off investment dividends. And when the market crashed, so did their income. In some cases, by 40 to 50%, many had to go back to work part-time just to cover basics. That's why one of the biggest shifts we talk about here is creating multiple streams of income. So if one dries up, you're not left scrambling. Mistake number 4, delaying financial decisions. Here's a big one, and it's sneaky. A lot of people know they need to make changes, but think, I'll deal with that next year. The problem is, time can be your best friend or your worst enemy when it comes to retirement planning. The sooner you start making changes, whether it's paying down debt, creating an income stream, or adjusting your investments, the more impact those changes will have. I waited a full year after my reality check before I started taking action. Why? Because I was overwhelmed. I told myself I needed to learn more before I started. But looking back, I could have been building income that whole time. The delay cost me a year's worth of progress. So what's one thing that you know you should be doing financially right now, but you've been putting it off? And be honest with yourself. Naming it is the first step to fixing it. All right, let's move on to mistake number 5, underestimating health costs. We all know healthcare is expensive, but most people still underestimate how much it will cost in retirement, especially for things like prescription medications, dental work, vision care, hearing aids, long-term care. These aren't optional expenses, these are essentials. And if you're not factoring them in your plan, then you can blow a hole in your budget really fast. My mom's dental work in her late 70s cost nearly $10,000 over 2 years. Insurance covered some, but most of it had to come out of pocket. And that was just dental. It's a reminder that health costs don't disappear after 65. They often increase. Mistake number 6, thinking that downsizing will solve everything. Downsizing, it can be a smart move. It's not a magic fix. And here's why. Moving costs money. Smaller doesn't always mean cheaper. And if you move to a higher cost area, you might save on housing, but spend more on travel, amenities, or those HOA fees. If downsizing is part of your plan, make sure that you run full numbers, not just the sales price of the current home. Mistake number 7, not planning for longevity. This one's tricky because none of us know how long we'll be living for, but with life expectancy increasing, there's a good chance that your retirement could last 25 to 30 years or maybe even more. If you've planned for only 15 to 20 years, you could run into trouble later on. It's better to plan for a long life and be pleasantly surprised than to run out of money in your 80s or your 90s. How do we audit our own plan for mistakes? Here's a quick exercise you can do this week. Number 1, write down all your expected income sources in retirement. Number 2, list your top 10 expenses and be honest. This is important. Number 3, highlight any that are variable or could increase. Number 4, ask yourself, if each expense went up 20%, would I still be okay? If the answer is no, for more than a couple of them, it's time to adjust your plan, like right now, today. Which of these mistakes have you seen in your own life or in someone you know? Share it in the comments. And it's not to shame anyone, but to help each other learn. Know that you're not alone in this. All right, now that we've covered the mistakes to avoid, we're ready to move on to the good stuff. The practical strategies you can use to not just survive on a fixed income, but to build confidence in your retirement future. Hey, before we jump into the strategies, if you're finding this helpful so far, hit the subscribe button and click the bell so you don't miss any videos. I'll share new content every week to help midlifers like you build retirement confidence without tech overwhelm or rejection. And remember, you can join my Retirement Freedom Seekers community free right now if you're one of the first 50 members. The link is down in the description. All right, let's move on to practical strategies to build retirement confidence. Friends, now we start the part that changes everything. We get to talk about why fixed income feels tight. We've talked about the mistakes that make it worse. Now let's get into what you can actually do about it, because here's the truth. You can't control inflation. You can't control interest rates. And you can't control the economy, but you can control your habits, your decisions, and how you set yourself up to handle whatever comes your way. I'm going to give you 5 practical strategies that have worked for me and for people in my Retirement Freedom Seekers community and other midlifers feeling they needed a change. Build a lean but joyful budget. First, let's talk about your budget. And I mean really talk about it. Too many budgets feel like punishment. Never go out for coffee, no vacations ever, no fun, no treats, no joy. That's not sustainable. A good budget should feel like freedom, not restriction. So here's how to build a lean but joyful budget. List all your expenses. Yes, all of them. Even the little oops ones, and you know what I mean. Categorize them into 3 buckets. Essentials, mortgage, rent, utilities, groceries, insurance. Your wants, that's your travel, hobbies, entertainment. And your luxuries, things that make life extra nice, but not necessary. High-end cable, multiple streams of services, premium memberships, that sort of thing. And number 3, identify 1 or 2 luxuries you can reduce or eliminate without feeling deprived. And number 4, relocate those dollars to either savings, debt payoff, or expenses that brings you joy. So one member of my community canceled 2 streaming services she barely ever used. That freed up $30 a month. She used that $30 to take her granddaughter to a matinee once a month. Experience that they both looked forward to. She didn't lose anything by trading something that mattered more. If you have an extra $50 a month in your budget, how could you use it? Save it? Pay debt? Or spend it on something meaningful? Drop in the comments. I'd love to hear it. All right, strategy number 2. Let's turn skills into income. This is a game changer, you guys. You have skills, whether you realize it or not, that can be turned into income. That doesn't matter if you don't want a job or you're not tech savvy. We can fix that. There's a way to earn that fits into your lifestyle. So here's some ideas. Freelance or consulting in your former career field, teaching or tutoring a person online, selling digital products like templates, guides, or courses, affiliate marketing of products you already love and use, starting a digital marketing business. This is where my own journey began in September of 2024. When I started digital marketing, I was a little nervous. I didn't think I could compete with the people that were half and 3/4 my age, but I learned that my experience, reliability, and people skills gave me an edge. I could connect with other midlifers in a way that no 20-something could because, well, I've lived it. If you could earn money from something you already know how to do, what would that be? Strategy number 3, monetize your assets. Sometimes the fastest way to increase cash flow is to make your existing assets work a little harder. So let me give you an example. Rent out a space or a room, long-term or short-term, like an Airbnb, or bring in a student. Rent or RV a camper or even driveway parking space. Sell items you no longer need, not just for cash, but to simplify your life. A man in my community rented his garage workshop space to a local artisan for $200 a month. He didn't change his life overnight, but that's $2,400 a year for space he wasn't even using. A tip. Start small. Pick one thing that you own that you could rent or sell within the next 30 days. Strategy number 4, invest for steady cash flow. This one can feel intimidating, but it doesn't have to be. We're not talking about risky day trading or chasing crypto booms. We're talking about safe, steady income producing investments like dividend paying stocks, real estate investment trusts, bonds, ETFs, annuities. The goal is to create passive income money without having to trade time for it. So a couple in their late 50s restructured their investments to include dividend paying stocks. Within a year, they were generating $300 a month in dividends without touching their principal. Would you rather have one big chunk of savings or smaller, steady monthly income? And tell me why, I'm curious. Strategy number 5, join or build a supportive community. Retirement planning, especially if you feel behind, can feel really lonely. You don't have to do it alone. Joining a community gives you accountability, access to sharing resources, and encouragement when things feel slow. When I started my Retirement Freedom Seekers community, I thought it would be a nice extra, but it's become one of the most powerful tools for our members. People share wins, ask questions, and get ideas they wouldn't have thought of alone. And there's a lot of teaching in there as well. If you're one of the first 50 to join, it's free for you. And I'd love to see you there. The link will be below in the description. Who do you talk to about money and retirement? If the answer is no one, it's your sign to find your people. So let's connect the dots. If you've combined even 2 of these strategies, you can reduce your expenses, increase your income, create more breathing room, and lower your stress. For example, cutting out $100 a month from luxuries, add $200 a month from a side income. That's an extra $3,600 a year. Over 10 years, that's $36,000 without even touching your savings. I know this can feel like a lot, but remember, you don't have to do everything at once. Start with one thing, get it working, then move to the next. That's how lasting changes happen. I know, friends, this has been a lot of information, and if you're anything like me, when I first faced my retirement reality, your mind is probably bouncing in between, okay, I can do this, or where do I even start? And trust me, that's normal. The important thing to remember is retirement confidence doesn't come from having millions in the bank. It comes from knowing you have a plan, you have options, and you're not doing this alone. I've been where you might be right now, worrying about what the future is going to look like, wondering if I'd ever feel financially secure, hoping I wouldn't have to work forever, but not sure how to change that. And I can tell you from experience, the turning point is when I stopped avoiding the conversation and started taking action, even if it was just one small step at a time. When I stopped seeing my situation as a dead end and started seeing it as a starting point, everything changed. Instead of saying I'm behind, I started saying I'm building. Instead of thinking it's too late, I started thinking, what can I create now? It doesn't matter if you're starting with 0 in additional income, or you only have 1 to 2 hours to work on this a day, or you're not tech savvy, or you feel overwhelmed by areas of starting over. If you commit to the process and stay consistent, you will look back 1 year from now and be amazed at how far you've come. Before we wrap up, I want to take a moment and answer this in the comments, if you're willing. What's one action you're committed to take in the next 7 days to move your retirement confidence forward? It could be canceling a subscription you don't use, joining a community like the Retirement Freedom Seekers, exploring a new side idea, creating your first budget in years. Small steps compound into big results. I can't say this enough. Trying to navigate all of this alone makes it so much harder. When you're in a supportive space, you learn from others' experience, avoid costly mistakes, get encouragement when things feel slow, and stay accountable to your goals. That's why I started the Retirement Freedom Seekers, and it's not just a place to learn, it's a place to connect, share wins, and support each other. And for the first 50 members, it's completely free to join. Here's what I know. You are capable of more than you think. You've already faced challenges, worked hard, and built a life full of experiences. That same strength can be applied here. And one day you'll be sitting in your favorite spot, maybe with a grandchild on your lap or a passport in your hand, thinking, I am so glad I didn't give up on my future. That's the goal. Not just the money, but memories, peace of mind, and freedom. All right, I promised my retirement freedom action list, and here it is. 5 simple steps you can start today. Number 1, track every expense for the next 30 days. Awareness is the first step to control. Number 2, cancel or reduce any recurring bills. Free up money without feeling deprived. Number 3, put even $50 a month into a high-yield savings account. It's less about the amount and more about building the habit. Okay, number 4, Explore new income streams. Start small, but start. Number 5, connect with a supportive community. Join the retirement freedom seekers and surround yourself with people on the same journey. And remember, if you're ready to rewrite your story and learn a skill set that gives you more income and peace of mind in retirement, you can also drop ready in the comments and I'll send you the exact blueprint I'm using. Before you go, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell so you never miss the videos. When you subscribe, comment, "I've subscribed," so I can personally welcome you to the community.